Hello and welcome to Too Ugly for Radio, brought to you by the same people who faked the moon landing. My name's Craig, and welcome to this very special two-part episode, where today we're going to be looking at the Transformers films and asking, can the upcoming Bumblebee movie save the Transformers films? Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the past 10 years, then you will have realised that Hollywood has been making big budget blockbusters every other year based on the Transformers. And come Christmas, we will get the greatest gift of all, a sixth Transformers film, but this one will be a prequel to all the other films, and the main focus will be on everyone's favourite Chevy Camaro ad, Bumblebee. If you're a Transformers fan, there has simultaneously never been a better or worse time to be alive. Transformers films are routinely some of the highest grossing films of the box office, while also shitting all over the characters we've all come to know and love. As a kid, I grew up with Transformers, so I was the target demographic for this film, and I loved it. I'm not by any means saying they're good films, just that I really enjoyed them. The first film was groundbreaking. It took these niche children's toys and put them front and centre of pop culture. These new films gave the Transformers designs a massive overhaul. It replaced the questionable cartoons from the TV shows with photorealistic CGI. And when I say the cartoons were questionable, I mean questionable. People were randomly changing colours, characters would walk through solid walls, and you can forget about all sense of scale. People were just changing size all over the place. And usually that's a good thing for Transformers, but not in this case. There's this great example of one character, his name's Broadside. He transforms into an aircraft carrier, but he also transforms into a jet. Just stop and think about that one for a second. How big is he? Is he an aircraft carrier that's the size of a jet, or is he a jet that's the size of an aircraft carrier? I shouldn't really be surprised though. Soundwave was a giant robot who transformed into a cassette player, because 70s. And in the original cartoon, Megatron turned into a gun, which the other Decepticons would have to use. What's really weird is that he didn't turn into some alien space gun. He just turned into a normal human pistol, but one that was still big enough to be used by a giant robot. Which really begs the question, why even bother turning into a gun? The whole idea is that your robot's in disguise. That's why everyone else turns into like cars and jets and stuff. If you're turning into a pistol that's 10 meters long, people are going to get suspicious. When Michael Bay signed on to direct these films, he said he wanted to ground them in realism, and so that's why Starscream, who transforms into a fighter jet, looks like a giant Dorito. Because in order for him to not tower over the other robots who turned into like cars and trucks and stuff, his robot mode had to be almost as wide as it was tall. Then there's the scene in the first film where the Allspark cube. Remember the Allspark? It's that big Rubik's Cube looking thing from the first film that all the Transformers are after. It's so big, it's got like its own room in the secret government base. But then Bumblebee touches it and it transforms down into the size of a football so he can give it to Shia LaBeouf. Just because it's smaller now doesn't mean it's any lighter. At the beginning of the film, we saw this thing hurtling through space and just demolishing meteors that got in its way. The moment that Bumblebee hands this thing to Shia, his arm should have been ripped off by the sheer weight of it. Anyway, the film ends, there's a big fight scene, and Megatron dies. And the final shot is Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox making out on top of Shia's car, which, in case you haven't been paying attention, is Bumblebee. That's another living person you're sitting on top of while you make out. Talk about next level friend zoning. The next film starts and Megatron is resurrected right away. Shia is now at university, still stuttering away, still charming. He's kind of like a shoddy American ripoff of Hugh Grant. In a surprisingly progressive step, this film introduces us to 4 new female Transformers. Or 2, depending on how you look at it. Like, I'll explain. One of them is a Decepticon pretending to be a girl in Shia's class. Shia also makes out with her, by the way, which she describes as like being face humped by a mountain ox, and it tasted like diesel. It had a diesely tinge to it. And then she gets killed shortly after being introduced. The other 3 characters, Well, the other... I do not know. The other three, or one characters, is RC. She is the most problematic character in this movie, and in a Michael Bay film, that's quite an accomplishment. The reason I keep saying she's one character or three is because she's one mind with three bodies. It's sort of a hive mind situation, and it is never explained in the film. It turns out that it's explained in the tie-in comic book series, but if I have to do essential readings to understand your film, then you've made a bad film. And if there is required readings for me to understand your film, I'd like to be told beforehand so that I have time to do my homework in order to enjoy your movie. Doesn't matter though, because all three of them are killed off in the end of the film. And you want to know why Michael Bay decided to kill them off? Because in his own words, he didn't like them, so he killed them. Bay decided to be accurate to the source material and recreate a scene from the 80s movie. Unfortunately, the scene he decided to recreate was the death of Optimus Prime. It comes after what has to be the most epic fight scene in all of movie history. Optimus Prime, in a forest, 3-on-1, and he's holding his own right up until he gets run through from behind with a sword. This scene was just devastating to the people who had grown up loving these characters. And what was worse was that this was the second time they had had to watch it. In the 80s, they released the first Transformers movie, which was a direct sequel to the beloved kids' TV show. So just imagine being a child and going to see your favourite TV character on the big screen for the first time. Maybe even bring along your Optimus Prime toy with you. And then in the very first fight scene of the film, Optimus Prime gets shot and fatally wounded. Then we get to see him on his deathbed saying, "Don't grieve for me," and watch as the light leaves his eyes. Like the actual light fading from his eyes. And that's it, by the way. He doesn't get brought back at the end of the film. He's just dead. Turns out the higher-ups at Hasbro, who owned Transformers, wanted to use the new film to sell more toys. But it's hard to shine the spotlight on new characters when they're sharing screen time with some already established characters. So the go-to move was to just kill off all the original characters of the show to make room for new ones. Children were so devastated that Hasbro then brought back Optimus Prime later on in the next series of the cartoon, but not before children everywhere had just been permanently scarred for life. Alright, so that is where we're going to leave that one today, because I have realised that apparently I have a lot to say about Transformers. And so now, because I cannot think of a segue, we're going to move right on into letters. Today's letter comes from Jessica. She commented on my last video, Willy Wonka Part 2, the hidden warning in Willy Wonka, where I talked about James and the Giant Peach. Anyway, Jessica says, "Great content, great editing. I like Tim Burton's version, so I hope you can forgive me." For those of you who don't know, Jess censors the podcast to edit out all the times I say fuck. There you go, Jess, there's another one for you. She also helps me edit the podcast so I can put it onto YouTube, because for some reason, my Windows Movie Maker won't allow me to combine audio with images. Not even images, just one. One static image, but no, apparently that's too much for Windows Movie Maker. Also, this Tim Burton version she's talking about must be some remake of James and the Giant Peach, because there is no Tim Burton remake of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And if there is one, then it must be so bad that I refuse to accept it exists. And for all of you following along at home, yes, this is a hill that I'm willing to die on. So I guess what I'm saying is, I disagree with everything Jessica has said, especially about the great content. Funny story about Jessica. I say funny story, it's more of a poor reflection on me. I've never been good at remembering people's faces. No, wait. I'm great at remembering people's faces. I've never been good at remembering people's names. I'm fine with faces. But names I might as well be writing down in the sand. Jess and I had been friends for more than 3 months before I remembered her name. Honestly, I think it's quite impressive that I managed to hide it from her for that long. One time I slipped up real bad. I was introducing Jess to a classmate of mine, and I think I said to him, "Have you met my friend Grace?" I pretended that I did it on purpose, but I think she knew. Anyway, if you're like Jess and you have any ridiculously wrong opinions that you would like to share with us, or maybe you've got an awkward story about the time that you've got the name of someone important in your life, then drop us a message in the comment section below, or tweet at us at Too Ugly for Radio on Instagram. You can follow the show on Facebook. Heck, you can even follow me in real life, just like on the street, maybe hide in some bushes. Anyway, I've been Craig, and you've been listening to Too Ugly for Radio. Peace!